Hey friends, I'm back with more astroquality, and I wanted to talk about some of the most volatile or difficult or action creating aspects between people in synastry, not composite charts. What are some of the more famous ones that can have us really creating some drama in our relationships? So some of the more volatile aspects do also tend to be some of the most passionate aspects as well, because volatility and passion are very much tied in synastry, in romantic relationships. And so it's going to typically be the personal planets in difficult aspect to Mars or Pluto, the ruler of the 8th house, or Saturn, that gives us some real difficulties. So Mars square Pluto in synastry, very difficult because it pits the egos of the ego of one person against the difficulties and the power structure and the desires and the manipulative way of getting those desires met in another person. So the opposition as well, very difficult. The conjunction doesn't tend to be difficult in synastry. It has its own, little bit of interest there, but it's not really one that creates real volatility or real difficulty between two people. So Mars also in minor hard aspect to Pluto. Don't forget to look at semi-squares, sesquiquadrates. The minor hard aspects in conjunctions can be really, really difficult in synastry. Venus-Pluto hard aspects. The conjunction is also considered a hard aspect in this case. The square, the opposition, the minor hard aspects are going to show up very strongly in synastry. And this is where we have somebody's love nature and value nature and what makes them feel good about themselves and a lot of their security, what's wrapped up in their sense of security in another person and security and the stability and the structures, the forms, the actual material things that they create and bring into their lives. That's Venus. When that's in hard aspect to somebody else's Pluto, which is taking. Pluto is always about taking because Pluto represents the resources of the partner. Venus is the resources that we go out and make for ourselves. We build for ourselves based on our talents and what we're good at and what we enjoy doing and the kind of work that we do on a daily basis, because Venus is that original natural ruler of the second house, Taurus. This is where we build the structures of our lives. The opposite polarity of that, the opposite axis is the 8th house. That's Pluto. That is the partner's resources. This is why Pluto is about getting things from the partner, specifically the sexual partner, because in the 8th house, we find our sexuality. We find our difficulties, our crisis, all the things that we don't want to deal with, the things that are buried. Pluto is always about things that are buried, things that are under the surface. We have to contact those things in order to make those things conscious and therefore face that fear and let it go and turn it into something else. So Pluto is always about taking the resources of the partner. Venus is about giving. Venus is a more selfless entity. That's up for debate a little bit, but in comparison to Pluto, it's certainly selfless. So we have a giver and a taker kind of scenario when we have hard aspects from Venus to Pluto in in synastry. Moon-Pluto hard aspects, including the conjunction. Ooh-wee. Moon-Pluto hard aspects and Moon-Mars hard aspects are very, very passionate because we have somebody's feelings the moon, the really subjective, sensitive, vulnerable part of somebody, in aspect to Pluto, which is about taking and wanting to control, and Mars, which is about ego and about, it is a selfish part of ourself. And Mars is very much about acting out and about things that happen rapidly when it comes to our feelings. It can be very difficult for the moon to have a conversation with somebody's Mars and feel like they aren't under attack, the moon person. Because Mars is about attack. Mars is about war. Mars represents what we want for ourselves. Pluto represents what we want for ourselves. We want to take that for somebody else, from somebody else. Both hard aspects, both planets in hard aspect to somebody else's moon imply a certain amount of pain that the moon person is going to undergo as a result of coming into direct contact with this other part of this person. Mars and Pluto are not sensitive aspects of anybody's personality. Now you have to look at everything, because we may have Mars in a water sign or have all this Neptune going on, and Pluto may not show up very strongly in somebody's chart. So you have to consider everything in synastry. You can't just judge one aspect as this is the way it is for everybody across the board. That is not how astrology works. It is extremely complex because humans are complex, and astrology allows for that. So all minor and hard and conjunction aspects from Moon to Pluto in synastry are implying a certain amount of passion and of defensiveness. So very, very difficult to have any kind of objectivity either when we have Moon in hard aspect to Mars, because the feelings and the conversation, the defenses, the passion ramps up so quickly. We start out at level 8 and there's nowhere to go except off the charts at level 10. So we always have to pay attention to that. And we also see, a lot of sex when we have Moon Pluto and Moon Mars, because unconsciously, this is how we really bond with each other. So we see a lot of make-up sex, and we see a lot of underlying sexual tension with these aspects as well, that, if you're really smart about it, you're working out this stuff in the bedroom. Hard aspects from Mars to Saturn is also not advised in synastry. It's possible, to negotiate these. I actually see this a lot. It's not uncommon to see this in synastry, but this is one of those aspects that will a lot of times have you ending up in the marriage counselor's office, because Mars in one person is where they want to go forward, and Saturn is where we want to regress or stay as we are, because we're afraid of change and we're afraid of going out of our comfort zone. And so Mars is really a part of us that is more okay with risk and with taking a chance. It's a spontaneous element of us. Saturn is not a spontaneous element of somebody else. And so when these two meet in a square or an opposition, we can see where the Mars person is very much hot to trot and the Saturn person is not. And it can lend a tension in a relationship that is a building force. And then we can have an explosion. Mars-Pluto aspects are like this too, where we build and then we explode. Because keep in mind that Saturn is the father of Pluto. Saturn and Pluto have a lot in common. And except that Pluto likes to change and demands change. Saturn resists it and is afraid of it. Pluto is afraid of it too, but it hungers for it. So difficult aspects, minor hard aspects, especially the square in Mars, between Mars and Saturn and the opposition, are hard to negotiate in Synastry. The conjunction is not an easy aspect either. This is where we have one person who's, ready to go, and the other person who's not ready to go, and they're blending. So this is also a difficult one to negotiate in Synastry. The ruler of somebody's 8th house or the ruler of somebody's 1st house in hard aspect to the other person's Mars, Saturn, or Pluto can be very difficult. Because the 1st house implies our ego and our identity. And the 8th house implies our difficulties and where we're really willing to, where we have a lot of resentment built up and where we're really willing to dig in our heels. 1st and 8th house are really stubborn entities. Uranus too, actually, in its own way, but it's weird. We'll talk about that one day, how Uranus is a little bit different. So it's always going to be a certain amount of ego sublimation that we have to go through when we have our 1st house in hard aspect to somebody else's Mars, Saturn, or Pluto. And the 8th house is way more unconscious than the 1st house. When you have the 8th house ruler, which is implying that planet that is lord over or rules over that part of your life, which is 8th house things, when that part of your life is in difficult conversation to the part of somebody else's life that implies their ego, what they want to take from you, and what they think is, Saturn is right and they are not interested in changing. When we have this conversation going on, it brings up a lot of resentment. It brings up a lot of unwillingness to compromise or to give in. So we have to be conscious of that if we see that in Synastry. Pluto and Mars in difficult aspect to another person's ascendant or midheaven can present some real issues with volatility because, and this would include the conjunction on either end, especially Pluto conjunct another person's ascendant. This implies a certain amount of control that the Mars or Pluto person is going to want to exert on the behavior of the actual behavior or the physical body or where that ascendant or midheaven person actually is in geography, want to control that somehow. There's it implies physical control a lot of times. Or they want to have control over their looks somehow, what they do. So this can be a difficult one. And of course you have to look at how is the Mars-Pluto interpreted. Are they very Martian? Are they very Plutonic? That's going to increase the chances of the ascendant or midheaven person feeling controlled or having to leave out major parts of their behavior in order to keep the peace when we have these difficult aspects. So it's always going to be attractive because we have the Mars-Pluto person at the instinctual level really connected to the ascendant midheaven person on a physical level. So there's always going to be a measure of usually overwhelming attraction when we have somebody else's Mars or Pluto in any aspect to somebody's ascendant. And then midheaven would be next. But yeah. There's a lot of aspects in synastry that can show resistance between two people, or volatility, or inability to meet in the middle or to compromise. And this is just a few of them. Some of the more well-known and the more common that we see in synastry. Is certainly not a complete list. And there is a lot of lessons, always, in difficult aspects. Difficult aspects in synastry imply the need for change or to become something better or to shift something. They're things between us, they're lessons that we're learning. So, I like to remind people that there aren't any deal breakers in synastry. There maybe are deal-breaking charts if we have a whole lot of stuff going on. This may be something that you may want to definitely consider. But usually, one or two difficult aspects, it can be negotiated, even more. But it is going to be, you will have to take into account the preponderance of difficulty and weigh that. Usually in composite charts, they do weight towards the difficult on average. And most people are really surprised by that. They expect to see that it's going to be almost all easy aspects. That's not really human nature. That's not why humans get involved with each other. If it's too easy, that's like the chart between you and like the milkman or you and the busboy or something where you really have no relationship. Hard aspects are attractive in synastry because they imply growth. And we are here to grow. If you are not growing, you are shrinking, you are dying. And so difficult aspects, and really if you look back on the most difficult relationships of your life, weren't those the relationships that forced you to grow the most? Weren't those the relationships that in your memory live as some of the most profoundly important relationships of your life? The really, really easy ones tend to be the more forgettable. Having hard aspects in synastry is not bad. It is a part of why we're here. It doesn't make sense to have everything easy between us and never be challenged by our relationship or by our partner. Now you have to look at everything because of course we don't want to enter into relationships that are just masochistic nightmares and we know we've got this going on and that going on, but yet it's a moth to the flame, and you have to use your common sense here. And a lot of times in synastry, we're not doing that because love is a drug. That's why sex and addiction are both found in the 8th and the 12th houses. We have to be really conscious that relationships will and are supposed to bring out some of the best and some of the worst aspects in ourselves. There is nothing that will make you grow more severely than a romantic relationship. And difficult aspects are there to teach us. They are there to cause us enough pain a lot of times to change or to reconsider something or to magnify something or to lessen something. So it's important to always understand that humans draw synastry aspects to us and composite charts to us that do tend to weight towards the difficult. But we also have to be judicious in who we choose and which relationships we choose. This, of course, was not a complete list, and I will probably do more lists like this, I think, because I get a little bit bored sometimes just doing the same old thing, and I'm going to start adding other videos too as well. But let me know if this was helpful, or if you have any comments or questions. I love your comments and your questions. They're very important. And you can find me on the internet at truthinaspectastrology.com. I am mainly a relationship and intimacy astrologer, but I interpret all types of charts. And you can find me on social media, Facebook and Instagram, other places, at Truth in Aspect Astrology. And I will be back super soon with more super cool videos. Bye-bye.